What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia stock, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, February 27th. Well, guys, Nvidia stock here today up $2.75 a share, 0.35% here. Let's take a look at this on, again, a variety of time frames, trying to get as much context as possible and pulling all the bias that we can out of the market today to give us an idea and really prepare and give us levels to watch heading into tomorrow. Now, let's start here on the 1 minute chart. First of all, quite a few of you guys are new, I believe, from the last Nvidia video. We got quite a few new subscribers from the Nvidia video in prep of today, Monday, over the weekend. So thank you guys so much for subscribing. If you haven't done so yet, I cover Nvidia stock every single day. Please subscribe to the channel. Happy to have you, and I'll keep delivering. Now, just really quickly here, we're taking a look at Nvidia on the 1 minute chart to start, just briefly. What I'm really looking for here is opportunity to generate some scalping revenue around what would be a core position. Okay, I think it's important to try to do that if you're able, if you have the time and the attention to do so. Now, Nvidia, as far as being an in-play stock, again, 99% of the market every day, as far as trading actively, is random. There's not significant positive expected value. There's no edge, right? And as traders, what are we after? We're after edge as much as possible. A stock being in play, what does that mean? Fresh news catalyst, right? Elevated relative volume, moving on a gap scanner, for example, where traders' eyes are. Now, Nvidia, it was very volatile off the open, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily in play today. Not a dig on Nvidia at all. That is just the truth of 99% of the market every single day, especially with a lot of blue chips. Okay, but it was so volatile off the open that as far as my one or two trades out of my playbook that do have significant edge, even on just regular blue chip stocks that aren't in play any given day, for example, like a repeat offender setup that I'm always watching. I've watched Nvidia literally every single trading day for years now. For repeat offenders, it's a very common stock that I'll trade that setup on. But we had such a volatile open that it blew out that channel, any hope of a psychological setup of that nature. So I had to move on from that today here on Nvidia. Okay. Last thing here on the 1 minute chart, the stock is down in about 4.5 points after hours. Listen, you guys, if you watch these videos for any extended period of time, you will hear me say a lot, or have heard me say quite a few times by now, please take after hours with a grain of salt. Do you see how low volume is? You can barely see it there. If you're watching this on a phone right now, you're probably having trouble seeing any of those candles. That's why. When volume is low, stocks are easy to bully. They're easy to push around. And I'm not interested in when a stock's getting bullied. I'm interested in when the big sample size comes in, which is the open tomorrow. All right, let's move on now and move away from the intraday mentality. Take a look at the 5 minute chart and start going through our paces here. So here on the 5 minute chart, what are we looking for, right? Well, we're looking at volume profile. I'm always looking for volume, changes in volume more so, that correlate heavily with big moves in stock price. Okay, so for example, and we have to be contextual about this. You can't just say, oh, a big green candle off the open. That's great. It's the open, right? We expect a big candle, regardless of whether it's green or red. So was it larger than anticipated? Well, I wouldn't say substantially so. It was over 2 million shares traded in 5 minutes. That's a lot. But granted, we also had that topping tail. Fine. What I find most interesting about the 5 minute volume profile here today is that we had these big red candles after that first 5 minute opening candle, and the volume wasn't actually all that impressive. We actually saw increasing volume on that bottoming candle, and then that rip out of the hole, we actually saw pretty substantial volume as well, which I thought was interesting, which I think kind of breaks, like, for example, if these two 5 minute candles had extraordinary volume, 4 million shares per candle, it'd be something to talk about. The way it is, I have to leave that alone. There's nothing to pull out of that. Now, this bigger red candle here, as far as volume is concerned, take a look at the actual stock movement candle. We had that big topping tail. This was a big mix of both buyers and sellers kind of battling, which beefed up that volume. So nothing to pull from that either. Into the close, we always expect larger volume. To be honest with you guys, I mean, that's nothing out of the ordinary. 1.25 million shares on the first 5 minute candle after the close. Whatever. Let's move on. There's nothing extraordinarily contextual or definitive to pull out of this. Which, I mean, listen, I would say as a bull, I'll take it. right? I'm not gonna be upset about that, especially given those two 5-minute candles after the opening 5-minute candle. All right, now 30-minute chart. Let's take a look here. Get really contextual, right, about the levels to watch come tomorrow. What do I want? I want the most obvious levels available to us as traders, as investors. What has the most eyeballs, right? I taught a class about this exact topic on the main Roensch Capital channel here today. After this video, if you want to go check that out, feel free. But the most popular time frames, at least I would say, some of the most popular, 30-minute, 4-hour, and daily. And the most popular indicators on those time frames are going to be the 50 and the 200 period moving averages. White line is the 50, gray line is the 200 period, and then we have some psychological levels, which we'll get to more so on the daily. Right now, the most in play for me is going to be that 50 period here on Nvidia on the 30-minute chart, and that's currently right around 794.70. The stocks in the after hours is at 786. We closed right about 790, 791. So listen, looking specifically at the 30-minute chart here tomorrow, bulls, here's what I'm watching. Gonna want to see a reclaim of that 50 period. Like, we were holding that midday today as a support level, but we eventually gave that up. Granted, it wasn't on extraordinary volume, but we did give it up. I'd prefer to see a reclaim and test and hold of support of that 50 period moving average here on the 30-minute chart tomorrow, because that sets us up for a big test of 800, which is a huge level, and we'll get to that shortly. Bears, what do you want here, right? You want that 50 period to continue to curl over downside. Any upside test, you want to see hard rejections and have the stock continue to fade with some psychological help from a curling over 50 period on the 30-minute. Bears, that's what you would be looking for. All right, 4-hour, right? Let's take a look. You can see here that the 4-hour, we've had quite the extension on Nvidia, so that 50 period is going to take its time getting up. It's right about 741, 742 right now. Of course, stock's about 40, 45 points higher. So looking at the 4-hour, I really can't sit here and say it's so incredibly relevant, but you know, as I'm sure we discussed on Friday for the weekend Nvidia video, is that if you look, this 50 period moving average here on the 4-hour, I really just want to see that making headway to the upside if I'm a bull, right? I want to get some feet up underneath the move as soon as we possibly can. Any psychological help that we can get, I want if I'm a bull. To try to break the thesis of, hey, the stock's trading on thin air, there's big gaps to the downside, look at this moving average, there's a giant gap. If you're a bull, you just want to break any thesis that the bears could possibly have. This is going to be one of them. And you can see here that it moved upside, I mean, over a full % in a single day, which on the 4-hour chart is not slow. A continuation of that, maybe getting above 750 as soon as we can on that 50 period on the 4-hour chart, that would be a great thing to see. Aside from that, anything else we can discuss, I think, is better done on the daily, which is the most important chart of all. Let's take a look. The daily always paints the most obvious picture here. And you can see that 50 period is just below 600 bucks, not relevant. So what is relevant here on the daily? Well, to me here, the most obvious story is going to be psychological levels. What's that going to be, right? Well, to the downside, 750. In the extremely near term, 800. And then you have 825 all-time highs. Bulls. Listen, a downside test wouldn't be our first choice, right? But any downside test, going to want to see a hold of 750 as a support level. Okay? Immediate concern. Reclaim 800 bucks a share. That would be beautiful. I would be thrilled tomorrow to just reclaim 800. Any additional cherry on top from there, push, get above, ideally 825, push toward 850, locking in not only a new all-time high, but cracking a few psychological levels along the way. Okay, bears, this is what you want, right? Reject 800. By all means necessary, just reject 8. Do not give up 8. Hold it as a resistance. Head down towards 750 for the ultimate goal, which is to crack downside below 750. Now, implied volatility here on Nvidia is not going to be all that changed from Friday. It did fall a little bit here from Friday. Just understand that we're currently, if we zoom out a little bit here and then come back into the last few months here, you can see that we're currently in about the mid-range. Just understand, again, the higher that goes, the higher the risk of IV crush, and the lower that goes, the more favorable conditions are going to be for the majority of options buyers, people looking to buy new options contracts. Okay? Now, the bias. That brings us to the chain, right? What was the bias from traders in the options chain today? Well, you can see here that we had a good sample size today, 1.07 million total contracts traded. 654,000 of those were calls, 417,000 of those were puts, so relatively heavy call side bias here with a good sample size. That's good data, okay? Now look at this though. The short-term speculators, the short-term bets, those cheapy, gambly style contracts that give us so much insight into the very near-term sentiment, 0 to 20 delta range, 228,000 calls in that range here today, 210,000 puts. That's, I mean, it's call side bias, yeah, but it's actually relatively undecided, which I thought was very interesting here today. But as has been typical with Nvidia in the last couple of weeks, you know, you come down here, every single delta range, to varying degrees, yes, but every single delta range that's out of the money, at the money, in the money, right? Shorter term on average, more midterm sentiment on average, and longer term sentiment on average, all of them are leaning to the call side, leaving us with a rather heavy overall call bias on the call per ratio. But again, listen, as always around here, right? Number one priority is to manage risk. Stay in the game. The options traders can absolutely be wrong. Listen, if you got value out of that video, please join up, subscribe to the channel. I'm covering Nvidia stock every single day. If you guys want to come trade with me every single day, take a look at that first link in the pinned comment. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.